Okay, if I click go live. All right, I want to make sure.
Nothing changes in my side.
Yeah, nothing changes from my side too. I'm going to remove you guys from the stage and then put you back on, okay?
Okay, great.
Can you put us back on, or we have to go back?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can.
I'm not on the stage, basically.
Yeah, neither of you are, but why is that? We're going to do this view.
It's weird because I can see a screen, but not like the
Yeah.
stage, but we are not in the stage or whatever.
Okay, maybe we just remove the overlay. Sorry, guys. There we go.
There we go. Hi.
All right. How are you? I should not be the main person on the stage, though. And I think it's just going to spotlight each person as they speak. So this should work well. All right. We're live, guys. How do you feel?
Excited.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I feel nervous. Going live on the internet is nerve-wracking for me for some reason. But
most people won't watch it live.
Due to a filter, guys. Due to a filter.
All right, cool. So for everybody watching live, welcome. I'm so excited to introduce you to two people that I know, that I admire, that I've actually worked with, both in Emerging Voices and outside of Emerging Voices. Liz and Cristian are both part of the Emerging Voices program, but also the hosts of Storytelling Lisboa, which is a really popular monthly live event in Lisbon, similar to the Moth. And each month, 10 storytellers share a story around a specific theme. I've told a story on that stage around my worst bad date that I've ever been on. Do you guys remember that story?
Yeah, great story. Bad dates are my favorite subject.
Me too, actually. The event draws, is it 200 people or is it more than that? I feel like there's a lot of people who come to your live events.
We never counted. It's such one of my regrets. We never been able to count how many people go to our event, but I think the largest had been around 200, maybe 200 more.
I would say probably the largest 250. The largest would be, our most popular is Love. Our most popular edition is the Love edition, and I would say around 250, 270 might come.
Wow.
I don't know. I'm actually just making that up, but it's a lot.
No, but I think I've done an estimate when I've been there, and it's a huge crowd. And what's been very cool to me is that it's a very engaged crowd. Do you guys find that? Do you pay attention to that?
I mean, yes, we find it. Not only do I this is like an audience in some ways, like we nurtured and built and were with like all of the time. And so, it actually took me like telling a story on another stage to realize the extent to which like we have this amazing magic audience. Like it is such a, yes, they're involved. They're really into storytelling as a community and as an idea. And they're really into like our underlying values, which are, sharing, vulnerability, inclusivity. And so to share in front of this audience, it's like, you just feel like this warm hug, even if you're not perfect. Like it's not a traditional stage in a theater where someone's paying a ticket and expecting to be entertained. It's a group of people that's gotten really, really big, but they're sharing each other's lives and reflecting back their own experiences. And people are always willing to help, always try. We have more people, like everyone always wants to, they come early, they move chairs with us. Like it feels so helpful and amazing. It's amazing. I feel very lucky that we have this group of people.
Yeah, and you've now launched a podcast called What Lingers, which is a spin-off from Storytelling Lisboa. So Liz, tell us a little bit about what Lingers is.
Okay. I get the elevator pitch. So anyways, so we every month, Cristian and I, we sit there and we listen to 10 people tell their stories. Our stage is one where we really encourage newcomers, people that don't have any experience on the stage. So we really get a wide range of experiences, and we also have a very international audience, people from all around the world, people of all ages. And when you listen to people's stories, they only have 10 minutes to tell them, and there's always questions that I have that are lingering, right? Like there's always like, oh my gosh, wait, but they mentioned, like, I don't know, sometimes somebody will be like, oh, so I hitchhiked on motorcycles from Poland to France. And then they go off onto this like whole other story. But then I'm like, oh my God, but what happened on this hitchhike, you know, or you know, one of our episodes that we've done for the next season that hasn't come out yet is like, one of our storytellers, he grew up in Synanon, which was started as a self-help kind of group and really became a cult. And he was a kid in Synanon, and he tells this story of amazing cruelty. And it's like one of those things where you're just like, wait, I need to understand more what that experience was for you. And so our podcast is essentially that, is we start with the story from our stage. And then Cristian and I get to have a conversation with the storyteller. The conversation's unstructured. And it's really just answering like our questions, which can range from more sort of emotional questions, like what, you know, like what was it like for you to be in this cult, you know, emotionally, whatever, to more logistical questions. Like we had a couple people that did ultra marathons, and like, I don't know, maybe the logistic questions are always mine, but it's like, how much were you eating on the run? Like, what time did you start your run? You know, so we can flesh out the details more. And that's our podcast. What Lingers?
So
subscribe.
I love. Okay, so first thing for people to know is that you are currently working on your 3rd season. So you already have 2 seasons out.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about your first 2 seasons because you guys tested a few different ways of making the show. And now on your 3rd season, you feel like, from what I'm understanding, you feel like we have a sense of how we want this thing to be set up and what the tone of our podcast is. The first thing I really want to dive into, though, is the intentionality and the thought that went behind the name, What Lingers. So, you know, this name came up when we were working on it in Emerging Voices. And you've mentioned before, Liz, when you and I have talked, that what Emerging Voices starts in a very slow and methodic way. So there's a lot of strategy that goes into it. So when you came up with the name What Lingers, and when we talked about it leading up to that, how did you land on this particular name? Because naming your podcast is a tough thing for a lot of people.
It is. It is. And now I'm just trying to think back, because in some ways I don't remember like the exact steps that we took. But I mean, the thing was that the name isn't just like a name, right? Like the name came out of really nailing down the structure and the idea behind it. And I think our name specifically, What Lingers, is very indicative of the content. And it also perhaps provides a little bit of intrigue. I've heard people say that about our name, that like, oh, it has a little bit of mystery. So we want to learn about it. But yeah, so I think that in Emerging Voices, we spent some time, like a good month, I think, really trying to nail down, like, what do we want to get out? What do we want to do in our podcast? What is going to be the structure, but what is like the goal? And ultimately our name also our name repeats itself often in the podcast itself, right? Like, because it's like, what lingers? Like we're answering our lingering questions. And so in some ways, this word linger comes up a lot, even in interviews, organically. And so it really points to the structure. But I think that finding the name was part of this whole really building out our like foundational map of how the podcast would, like our foundational map of the podcast.
Yeah. And actually, Cristian, you were the person who was really pushing for the podcast between the two of you. So tell me a little bit about the version of you that had a dream of making this podcast real, and why was it so important to you to actually start this thing? Because you had a very successful live event. So why create a podcast?
Yeah, I think when I started collaborating with the team of Storytelling Lisboa and we started recording the stories live on the event, and then I kind of realized we had such an amazing library of content, of nice stories. And it always bugged me the fact that we weren't doing anything with those amazing stories. So I started thinking what I can do with that. And I actually told Liz, like, we should make a book. We should publish a book with all these amazing stories, or we should do a podcast. And brainstorming the idea of the podcast was more easy because the videos were already there, and I was thinking of just publishing the videos on YouTube, and so, kind of like the Moth situation. And then when I talked to Liz, and she was like, yeah, maybe we can have an interview format. And that's how kind of everything started to get shape. But my idea was to use these stories and give them to the world. Basically, we were having these amazing stories in Lisbon, and why not give it out to the world? So that was basically the dream I had for all these amazing stories that we had. And of course, the road to actually creating the podcast, of course, involves you and getting to know you. You were in the storytelling stage and helping us also when we wanted to do the podcast, and I had no idea how to do a podcast, and we were so overworked and overloaded with the event itself. So I think that was one of the first resistance for us. But yeah, I was that was the stage I was like. I just had the dream of creating something with these stories, and maybe the book hasn't left my idea list. I still want to pursue that.
Liz is laughing. Liz is laughing because she's like, I didn't know we were gonna do that.
I didn't know that was on our list.
Yeah, she's like, Chris, stop having ideas.
Earlier, Liz mentioned, we had to get clear on what the purpose of our podcast is. And you didn't end up doing the thing of just publishing the videos that you had recorded on YouTube. So what's the difference between your podcast and the live events? Like, what's the point of your podcast?
Well, at the beginning, we didn't know what to do with the videos. We had the videos, we had the stories, and on Emerging Voices, we kind of start thinking what actually want to know, because the interview was just simple. Like, we can interview the storytellers and get to know them. But then we started thinking, like, who we want to talk about it. And then that's when the name kind of came across, because we were having these specific stories that we remember so much because specific details. And that's kind of how the name started when Liz was talking, because those things linger with us, like this specific story, these specific people linger with us. And then Liz is a very curious person about details. I'm more into the emotional side of the stories and the person, but Liz has this curiosity of wanting to know what happened and why and where. So we thought it was just a perfect combination. The live event, we just give voice to people to share their stories, their life stories in 10 minutes. But in the podcast, we had the opportunity to actually get the full story, to ask those questions that at the live event, you just go on stage, you tell your story, and you go home, basically.
Yeah.
And people come and they just go home. And then this feels nice because always at the live event, at the end of the event, people come and talk to us, and they want to know, and people go and talk to the storytellers. But of course, it's 10 p.m. It's already too little time. So we'd have that opportunity with the podcast to sit with the person calmly and ask all those questions that we had during the live event.
It's almost filling in the gaps, it sounds like the person will give you. Yeah. Okay. So tell me about the first season of your podcast. It was almost an extension of this live event. So describe it for the audience, Cristian, and then Liz, I'll ask you to jump in as well. What was the structure of your episodes in the first season?
Yeah, so one of the first things that we thought with the podcast was that we are gonna lose the live event magic, because it's very magical to be at Storytelling Lisboa and witnessing these people being courageous on stage.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought of kind of replicating that and record the podcast as people were having kind of like the same experience. So we created like a small event at a bar or a coffee place where we re-invited these storytellers to re-share their story on stage. And in front of a small audience, we would record the story, and then we will sit in front of this audience to ask them questions, the questions that we had, but also people would be able to ask their questions. So the audience was involved in the first season. And it was amazing, of course, but Liz and I were living in Lisbon at the time. We are not at the moment. So that was easy for us. And also it became another event. Basically, we were hosting a different event, and then we were recording. And then the sound was not always neat, or we had some technical difficulties. And that's the format of the first season. It's a live event. The storytellers tell us a story, and then we sit and we get to ask all these lingering questions, and the audience also have an access to that. Then we kind of realize that it's never the same thing when you tell your story for the first time and then when you tell it for the second time or
yeah
And
like you
that's
can't
something-
replicate the magic.
Yes.
Mm.
Exactly.
Liz, is there anything you'd add to that?
There was something and now I've forgotten, but yeah, so no, I just think that we were on stage trying to interview people, and I think interviewing people is actually a really tricky thing, and I think we're still sort of learning as we go, which would be one of my tips: learn as you go.
Very good tip.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like an obvious one, but we were trying to interview on stage and manage an audience and manage nerves and manage the other people's nerves. And I think in some ways yes, the story lost its magic sort of in the second telling, not fully, of course, but and then it was just. Yeah, we were managing too much. You know, I think most podcasters, they go from like podcasting to then live events. We went the opposite direction.
Yes.
We went from live events to podcasting. And now that we've in our second season and now our third season, we've been recording remotely, editing much more heavily. And this all gives us it gives us a way to focus and really draw out the conversation in a way that I don't think we couldn't do on stage.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. There's someone in the comments asking who produced the podcast and how did you find your producer? And I think this is actually a really interesting question for you because you had someone else helping you the first two seasons, right? Mm-hmm. And now you are both producing and editing it yourselves. So where did you find a producer? This is something a lot of podcasters are probably asking themselves.
I mean, we're lucky people. Like, you know, storytelling gets people to just volunteer to do stuff for us. And so we had a podcast producer named Johnny. He was from the UK, and he wanted a project that, you know, this is sort of what he does as his business, but he wanted to do a volunteer project and be involved in storytelling. And so we got really lucky like that, because the first season, while I'm talking about it was really hard for us to manage, like speaking on stage and all of these things, we didn't have to manage any of the audio. So in some ways we got that completely taken off our plate. So in terms of giving advice to other people for finding a producer, we were lucky and he landed in our lap. But yeah, I don't know. I hang out on Reddit. On Reddit, there's producers, but I don't know if that, I don't know if that's the best way, but also you don't need a producer. I mean, it was
let's
very
talk
helpful.
about that. What does that mean? Why don't you need a producer? Because this is my whole thing for new beginners or for new podcasters is that actually you want your hands in everything when you first start, so that you know what your taste is, and then you can hire out. Versus doing it the opposite way means you're being led by someone else, when in certain cases that could be the right move but I think for a lot of people, when they have their own idea, starting with the nitty-gritty is actually quite helpful.
Yeah, I think for us it was really nice because finding Johnny, the advice will be ask for help, because we actually went on stage and we told to the audience we're creating a podcast, and Johnny was on the audience, and he kind of raised his hand and was like, I want to help because I love what you're doing, I love this project, I want to help. So the first move, maybe tell your people that you need help in finding a producer. And then but you're absolutely right, finding a producer and finding Johnny, he was amazing on speeding up the process of creating the podcast, because probably it would have taken us longer. But because of his experience, we were just like, we did it in one summer, basically everything, and now we're doing it on our own. But we definitely work always negotiating our vision with his vision and our way with his way. And yeah, definitely it was that part of like, what do we want to do and what does he want to do, what do we think is best for us and what he thought it was best for us. So it was always like trying to find that middle ground. But now, since he helped us to create everything, and then we saw like, oh, okay, we know how to do this. It's kind of like we got the gist, and Liz got the sound setting, and we got the interviewing thing, and all these things that were kind of new for us, for everyone. And the first season is, I just when I look back and I hear the first season, it's just like, oh my God, it was so difficult to be on stage, as Liz was sharing. When you are live and when you are in front of an audience, you want to perform, you want to be this person of politically correct, whatever it is. And then when we take that pressure off, it became so much easier, and became so much us. Which is what we wanted. Basically, the storytelling event is so pure because it's so human, it's so raw, it's so vulnerable. So I feel like as we went online and we took out of the pressure of the live event and the audience asking questions, the storytellers and us, we got more chill and relaxed, and we're able to explore more like in the easiness of the human experience.
And it's more intimate when you're not having to perform.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Sorry, go ahead, Liz.
I want to say something, because you said like you want people to get into like the nitty gritty and like build it out, and I kind of want to say like, yeah, because, well, the thing is, we had producer Johnny, and Johnny was amazing, and Johnny gave us a lot of tips that I think if we hadn't had him, we would have just like not noticed, like energy in our voice, intros, outros, like making them punchy, like, and he was really good at like hyping us up, and he was really good at positive affirmation, but also like pushing us in the right direction. And so in that way, I think probably in emerging voices, then you have other people that can be that person to like say like, you need more energy in your voice or whatever. But now, like, because I've been editing it now pretty much for the last season and now this season pretty intensely. And I have to say that editing, okay, this is a very tedious job. And I would like everybody to know that if you're going to make a podcast, like, I guess it depends how heavy handed you are. And I'm heavy handed, but the thing is about editing, you learn so much. No, and I'm not talking about editing. Okay, yes, you learn so much about editing, but I learned so much about interviewing. I learned so much about how I speak. I learned so much about how Cristian speaks. I learned so much about how different interviewees speak. I speak very non-linearly. People repeat stuff all the time. And so you sort of learn, and then almost subconsciously, I can find myself being a better interviewer because of the editing. And so in some ways it's like, getting into the details. Also, if you're not doing the nitty gritty, you don't understand, like if you're not doing the editing, you don't understand these annoying little, I don't know, like sounds, like this or something, like all these, so there's so many layers to understand. And if you're doing it all, it's kind of great. And also I have to say that in the beginning, you're in the beginning, you're learning and you're doing it and you're learning. And so in some ways, like, wait to get professionals involved till like later on, once you know what's up, once you know what you want, you know?
Yeah. But I love that you're talking about editing, because I think this is one of the things that blocks a lot of people from ever starting, because they're like, editing is so the idea of being my own editor is so overwhelming. We use Descript, which I think makes editing 10 times easier, right? Because it's like editing a Google Doc. It's not as easy as editing a Google Doc, but it's as close as you're going to get. Would you not say?
I mean, if I didn't have Descript, I wouldn't do this. To be honest, I'm like, I couldn't do it. Because I actually don't know how people edited before. Like, you could edit with. So the thing about Descript is you're editing a transcript. And so I come to this from a writing background. And so in some ways I enjoy the editing, that part of the editing, like shaping it. So yes, but editing is hard. Descript makes it easy, but I can't finish. We have 3 voices, and to finish that in Descript is difficult. I don't know how to do it. I finish and polish in Reaper. This is my new, I'm really into Reaper. But anyways, everybody has their own way you know,
since we're on this topic, your interviews are how long? And then how long does it take you to edit that interview?
Okay, I personally got faster this time, and I really speeded myself up. But the interviews this season were about 1 hour, and I edited the interview portion down for most of them to about 40 minutes. So yeah, 60 minutes to 40 minutes. So like about 70%. I kept about 75% or 70%.
How long did it take you to do that?
It took me, I'm going to say for each, it's 1 hour. I would say it take me about 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours to get to my raw interview. And then I have to put the intros and like do all this stuff. And then I do audio cleaning. So yeah, it takes me a while.
So maybe
and that's my fast speed. That's my fast speed.
Okay. So maybe a total of like 6 to 7 hours in total per interview.
No, yeah, maybe.
Let's say 7 okay. Let's say 6 just to.
But my first season was longer.
Okay, that's exactly what I was going to ask. How long did it take? How long did it take at first? Okay,
10 hours or more.
The reason I'm asking this is because I think it's very helpful for new people to know that it does get easier. You do get better, and the time gets cut significantly,
like in half, more than half.
Yeah. Which is incredible. So I think knowing that that's coming is so encouraging. Because when I started in GarageBand, and then I went to Pro Tools. All of these you edit by sound waves. You're not looking at a transcript. And editing was hands down the worst part of the process for me. I loved interviewing, but I hated editing. And once Descript entered the game, it was a complete game changer. Like I loved doing that. Okay, so how did you get better, Liz?
By doing it, watching YouTube videos and doing it. Literally watching YouTube videos and doing it, and then I gain knowledge of what works, what doesn't work. I am if you are going to use Descript and a DAW, this would be in fact, I don't know what DAW stands for, but it's a type of audio editing software. Yeah. If you use both, which is what I do, I recommend to learn Reaper. Reaper is it's basically free trial forever, or you pay a very nominal fee. It's very good, very well documented. I first learned Audition. This was a mistake. And so that's my tip. Learn Reaper. It's better.
Amazing. Okay. The reason I was asking you that is because I think that it's very helpful to know you just have to do it. You just have to bite the bullet and do the hard thing. And then over time, it gets better.
Yeah. And it's kind of fun. Sort of.
I'm glad you think so. Cristian, you have mentioned that interviewing and like being a good host was one of the things you were intimidated by at the beginning. Also, English is not your first language. So you're making this podcast in English. Tell us about the evolution. Like, what were you feeling at that very first interview? How did you feel about it when you listened to it? And then how do you feel now when you sit down to interview someone?
Yeah, there were, as you just mentioned, there were several variables because at the Storytelling Lisboa, we just host the event, we don't talk much. And then all of a sudden, I was on the spotlight with a mic, asking questions and realizing that there's people looking at me. So the first episode was nerve-wracking for both Liz and I. We were like shaking. It was
It was
just,
hot.
it was
Mm.
summer in Lisbon, very hot. It was very difficult. And also, I think like for the first season, I didn't kind of understood the assignment, or I was just like trying to have this natural conversation with the person, but sometimes I figure myself sharing too much about me or taking over and talking too much. And then
Mm.
it's like, or making like bad jokes or mean comments. And it's like, that's kind of like of the live thing is like, you cannot erase that.
Yeah.
Luckily for us, or Johnny, our producer, was, don't worry, we can edit it down. You can be yourself. Because that's one of the things, like, I was losing myself on the fear of not being a good interviewer. So I was losing my spark, I don't know, whatever.
Mm.
It was
Mm.
me, and I was being this blunt person that yeah, I want to introduce blah blah blah. So it kind of took me a while to get comfortable with what do I want to know actually,
Mhm.
and to do something that you taught us on Emerging Voices is kind of to know who you are in the podcast and
Mhm.
understand your role. And once Liz and I got comfortable with, and Johnny helped us a lot with this, like understanding like who are we in the podcast. And
Mhm.
like, for example, Liz is very curious. She likes details. She likes the process. She's into those things. So she gets that part. And I'm like more on the other side of wanting to understand how you felt and how was your mom and your family and how is your heart and like
Mhm.
all these other things. And once we get that clear, I get more comfortable on getting my questions done. You know, like what do I
Mhm.
want to ask you, and thinking about what the audience want to know from this story as well. So of course there was a huge learning curve at the beginning. Yeah, I felt like everything I was saying it was not good. I listened sometimes to the podcast and some words are really hard for me to say in English, so we had to repeat several times the intros or the outros and finding those words that were correct. But at the end, like I got comfortable with not the imperfection of it, because this is also
Mhm.
storytelling Lisboa. We are human. We are just not
Mhm.
perfect, and I'm gonna speak badly. I have an accent. People will or might not understand me, but that's part of it. And definitely, if you are afraid of your voice, I remember Liz hated her voice at the beginning. um, it gets better, totally gets better. Again, doing it, practicing. We didn't, I don't think we consciously did anything to improve. It's just by
Mm.
doing it and doing it and doing it, like over episode, we were just being conscious that, oh, this was a good episode. Like, we asked really nice questions and we were comfortable. But something that it was very important for us was that we both, Liz and I, were comfortable and like chill. Like at the beginning, we had this method of like rehearsing our questions. So we will prepare our questions, and then it kind of put us in a little cage of we cannot leave
Mhm.
the script of the questions. And then like
Mm.
Liz needed to ask some questions and I needed to ask other questions. So we were both like, our minds were, is it me? Is it you? Is it your question? Is
Yeah,
it mine?
in the
And we were
logistics.
kind of distracted with the logistics.
Mm.
And then for the third season, we were like, we're gonna go just as we're having coffee with this person. And it's so much better because we work that way. Like maybe some other people, they need the structure, but we don't, because we are inherently curious. I mean, I'm also a therapist, so I've been asking the difficult questions for a couple of years. So we got comfortable, and when we got to that place of being comfortable with the interview, The questions started getting to more fluid. The conversation was flowing more. Also, the storyteller was more comfortable in that sense. So it was, of course, a process, but yeah, it took time. It took time for sure, and it took doing it and recording and listening to our. It's never easy listening to your first episodes and interviews. It will never sound perfect. It will never be good
Yeah.
enough for you, but it is what it is. You're learning, and I gladly had Johnny and had Liz to be like, it's amazing, it's going great. Johnny was a really, really good, a positive encourager, and he was like, you're doing
Yeah, he
great. He
was.
was always telling me like, you're improving so much, your English, your words, you're speaking. So that's important. Like the community, I know in Emerging Voices, you have the circle community that where you can have that feedback as well. So yeah.
Louise Carmen says, hosting a podcast in a language that's not your first is so badass. Cristian, that's for you.
Thank you.
Liz,
Yeah.
were you going to add something to that?
I was, and now I totally blanked on what it was. I know. So Cristian said, now, because now we don't prepare questions, which is, we sort of do, but like in our own head, we don't have a list that we're both looking at. So we're not distracted by this, like, oh, we didn't do this question. So we can let the conversation flow more naturally. But he said, so we're just like having a coffee with them. But actually, I want to say that not quite, because we learned a lot in the first season and the second season. So we're doing all these things that we wouldn't do in a coffee, which is we're stopping people and we're asking them to clarify things. Especially there's a lot of things they might drop about Lisbon or something like this that, like some random person in Toulouse, I don't know, in Michigan wouldn't know, or in Colombia, they wouldn't know. So we're naturally doing that. So we have this, so, and we learned that somehow. I think Johnny poked us about it, and then yeah, so it's like, it's more coffee talk now, but with some flair. I mean, with some expertise. We're still building.
Yeah.
Oh, and you can edit yourself. You can edit yourself. That's the other thing. Okay, you don't like what you said? You can edit it. It's great.
Yeah. So when you say we don't prepare questions, well, we kind of do. How do you know what you're going to get out of the interview if you don't have some sort of list? Okay.
I have something to say on this. I know people definitely interview in different styles. And I was just listening to a podcast today, and I can tell she's a radio person. She knows what she's doing. She prepares her questions and she guides, and she really has like a heavy hand in sort of guiding the conversation. And I like that. And you feel taken care of as a listener. But the thing is that there's still, no matter, I'm just not, we in general, with storytelling and with everything, we're not like we're not really overly preparing with the idea that we can control it. And like, I do not feel that you can control interviews, and I do not feel like you know what you're going to get. Especially when our drive is what lingers, like what else is there in these, is there in these stories? Because somebody can say something that is like kind of, just not what you would expect. And then you really want to hear about that, right? I can't fully think of an example right now. And so, and also you don't know, like interviewing different people is really interesting because different people speak in such different ways. And some people need sort of a different push, or, you know what I mean, to get something out. So in some ways, I think it's like, we prepare our questions in the sense that we really listen to the story multiple times, and we each, I think, like come up with like the things that actually linger for us, and we're prepared to answer that, but we also are prepared to let it go in another direction. And yes, and maybe, and I don't know, Huete, you might have a different idea about, and you also have more experience about being able to, that the interviewer is able to control more. But I feel like in some ways, it's such an uncontrollable thing. And I know in Emerging Voices, you also talk about the interview podcast being the most difficult. I get it, because it's like a lot of uncontrollable variables.
I don't think you can control the outcome. I definitely don't think you can control the outcome. But the level of what you guys are describing is that, or at least how I'm hearing it, is that because you've done 2 seasons where you've tested what it looks like to write a bunch of questions out.
Mhm.
You've seen how rigid or not rigid you get. You've seen that you've wanted to explore your curiosities and couldn't. What you're describing is actually, you do have questions prepared. You just don't have them written.
Yeah.
And you haven't
I have to
communicated
correct.
them to one. Yeah.
Yeah,
go
I have
ahead.
to correct myself because what was happening is that we were doing like a sheet with
Mhm.
names and like this
Yeah.
is Liz's question, this is my question. We both
Yes.
knew what one the other. But now
Yeah.
actually Liz is right. We are actually watching the stories beforehand, and I'm questioning myself like, why do I want to know from this story? What actually lingers for me in this story?
Yes.
And I'm
Yes.
writing them down. And now that Liz just gave us a beautiful example because it's been twice that she goes like, I blank. And
Yeah.
this happens to me when I'm interviewing and the person, like, I ask a question, the person gives me a response, and then, or she's talking to Liz, and I have a question popping into my head, and I'll be like, I need to ask this later. And
Mhm.
I got myself forgetting this question. So I always have like paper on my hand with a pen to write down all these questions because it's a lot of happening at this when you're recording a podcast. People are talking and you're like, oh, this and that, and then your mind is not good at this. You cannot remember everything. So
Yeah.
if I can give you a tip, prepare your. I always have my questions on a little paper for me, but Liz doesn't know what I'm gonna ask.
Yeah.
If she asks, I just erase that question. But if a new question rises while they are talking, I write it down in the paper because I'm sure I'm gonna forget about that, and
Yeah.
I don't want to forget those important lingering questions.
So you're describing essentially like one of the hardest things to learn as a host. For me right now, as we're doing this live, for example, I have you guys right here and the list of questions over here. But I kind of like can't really see the questions. Like I see a highlight that says biggest challenge, what advice would you give? But I can't see the other questions. And frankly, this conversation is interesting enough for who I think this is for that I'm not being derailed by the list. But if we got to a place where I didn't want to dig deeper into what you were asking about, I would just scan right to the side and I just ask you, okay, super interesting. So would you say figuring out your dynamic as co-hosts has been the biggest challenge, or what has been the biggest challenge? I don't know if you see that, but it's like it's very easy to transition once you've just done it enough times. You know how to like kind of dance with your guest and with your questions.
Yeah, and that's an art, and we're still working on that art. And I know, and I can notice in even. Oh wait, is she? Am
I
I?
see we're here.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't know. The whole screen changed, so now I can only see myself. But I mean, I can notice sort of Hiwete's skill in. I can tell I can, you know, now that I've like been in our own podcast, I can like notice like your structuring and I appreciate it. And then, or when I'm listening to other podcasts, I can like notice their structuring. And yeah, it's an art that I think takes a lot of experience to build.
Yeah. And I think what you said about editing yourself is maybe the single most helpful thing for me. Was the more I edited myself, the more I realized I want less of this, I want more of this. And it's great that you have one another, because Cristian, even if you're not editing, Liz editing gives you feedback. She could just tell you, hey, I think it'd be great if you did more of this, or that was really great when you did that in our last interview. Were you going to add something else, Liz?
Blanking
or Cristian?
Yeah, this hack of knowing that you can edit yourself is also good for the storyteller or the person that we are interviewing, because at the beginning, this season that we're doing it solo, we kind of didn't tell people about it, and I kind of saw some people like wanting to say the right thing. And now we are kind of telling them, don't worry, this is not live, this is recorded. If you say something that you don't like, you can just start over. Or for myself, I even do it sometimes. Like I say something wrong and I need like, wait, and I pause and like, I go to the first sentence and I said it clearly with a better accent or whatever. And we tell this to the people, like, you can correct yourself. We're gonna edit this, so chill. Like, you don't need to be
Yes.
perfect. You can, if you want to rephrase what you just said, if you want to add something, or if you want to say it differently, this is also possible. So is this awareness, it helps us a lot.
Scott F01 says, who is your audience and how did you figure that out? On this question of asking, on this topic of asking questions, I'm sure you're thinking about your own curiosities, but you're also thinking about what your audience needs. So how did you figure out who your audience is?
Shall I? Yeah, this is Scott. Good question, Scott. Scott, great question. It's something I think that it's something that in some ways we're still trying to figure out. Because it's hard, because we came from this place where we have a really strong in-person audience. It's like into us and into the project and participatory, and that's a very different thing than a podcast, right? Like that's in person in a space, and so we worked in Emerging Voices to sort of nail down our like who we believe the audience of our podcast is. And I think in some ways, like our problem, our pain point, I don't know, right now is trying to figure out how to reach those people. I think that's a struggle for most podcasts, I would say, is how do you reach your audience in a space that's quite saturated. And also, I think podcasts, unlike, I don't know, Instagram or Substack, I don't really use Substack, but anyways, unlike some other platforms, like podcast doesn't have there's like, I'm not handed podcasts on a platter like I am in an Instagram feed. I'm handed new accounts.
Yeah.
And that kind of sucks. It's always kind of sucked for me personally as a listener to find podcasts.
Yeah.
But as a podcast, trying to reach our audience is something that we're struggling with, and we will when we launch our new season and stuff, we're going to start guesting on some other podcasts that are also like that also do storytelling stuff. Like we've been talking to another podcaster, and we'll do more of that and do more outreach. But yeah, I think, we worked on, we have an idea, we have images of who our audience is, and we have a live audience. So we're assuming it's sort of those people, somewhat those people, but those people that listen to podcasts. So yeah.
Wait, so can you describe that a little bit more? You did answer it, but can you give us that description? Like, who is that person that listens to what Lingers? Sorry, am I putting you on the spot?
The Storytelling Lisboa audience is it's like an immigrant. It's an international person who live abroad or move abroad. It's probably in their middle 30s or 40s. It's female. We know that for a fact, that because it's a very human thing, the storytelling, to share your stories, to be vulnerable. So of course, that kind of it's the profile that we have both in the storytelling event and what Lingers. My friends said that basically who likes gossip, because we're kind of gossiping with people's life and getting into just little juicy details sometimes. But yeah, this person, it's someone who traveled the world, someone who is curious about other human experiences, at some degree about the human nature of being emotionally out there.
Can I ask, what is the emotional driver that gets them to your podcast? Like, is it that they are feeling like, I imagine this person that you're describing is not very self-helpy. Like, they don't love the Andrew Hubermans of the world. And I might be wrong, so you can correct me. But they're not super self-helpy. They're much more, they learn through other people's stories. So they might like a show, for example, like Where Should We Begin, which is not very prescriptive. Like on Where Should We Begin, it was a couples therapy show that I worked on. You would never hear the couple being given very specific, like, don't do this, right? But you would hear a therapy session where a therapist is asking questions, and essentially you end up walking away asking yourself some of those questions and learning by way of hearing someone else go through a process. I imagine your audience has a similar kind of sense, and I imagine they're coming because they're looking for connection. I'm making this up, but correct me. They're looking for connection. They want to understand themselves better by hearing other people's stories. Did I just write your audience profile for you?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, like curious about humans, interested in hearing their stories, interested in knowing more of their stories, interested in an open way, right? We don't have one type of story. Like this season that's coming up, we have somebody that run the Marathon des Sables, which is a 7-day marathon across the Sahara Desert. It's not a marathon, it's an ultra marathon across the Sahara Desert. And he wasn't an athlete, and he trained for a year and he did it. We have somebody that grew up in Synanon. Like when he was 16, he was in Synanon, and he saw an amazing thing of cruelty, like a profound cruelty, and it changed his life. We have one guy who grew up in Bali and was like, and this one doesn't have sort of this deep emotional thing, but it was such a fun conversation. And he is like a magician, and he does pranks. And we were just talking about all his kid pranks in Bali and like magic, you know? And so it's very much like, it's not always like profoundly sad or profound. Sometimes it's light and fluffy, and sometimes it's pretty heavy and pretty intense. And so, yeah, so sort of up for surprise. Let's say up for surprise. I like that.
Up for surprise. But you don't go to a podcast for surprise. You go because they deliver something to you. You almost know anytime you listen to this. What shows do you listen to?
Okay, well, I only listen to narrative true crime podcasts and
cool.
long form. So but I'm up for, no, when I say up for surprise, okay, I believe this applies to storytelling and our podcast. I believe very strongly in structure and containers. Mm-hmm. And we have a very strong structure at storytelling, especially because we're managing lots of people and there's a lot of rules and all of this. But once you get outside of, if you adhere to all of our rules, then you are free. Mm-hmm. And so with our podcast, there's an expectation. The expectation is I will hear a story that will last 10 minutes. The story will be from somebody, and I don't know the emotional valence of the story. Mm-hmm. And then I will hear a conversation that goes deeper into the story. So I think in that way you know what to expect, but you don't know what to expect emotionally. And that aligns with who I think our potential audience is, which is somebody that's curious about the human condition, the range of human experience. I just made my case.
I think what I'm hearing though is the guarantee is a sense of connection. It's like you just feel a little bit less alone because you've heard somebody else share their humanity with you.
Yeah, regardless of the type of the story, and the story might be surprising in the sense of what are we talking about, we always end up kind of opening the box of how this affected you as a human in this planet. And basically that's what we always deliver, the human nature of connection, being sad or being happy or being challenged by your family life. So I think from Storytelling Lisboa, the connection and the vulnerability was always there. And I think that's what it comes across in what Lingers always, like this human, raw emotion, whatever it is. We always go a little bit into that. Although we have the other part, like about the storytelling structure or about the life structure, logistics. But at some point, there's always this structure of like, people can relate. And that's the beauty of the storytelling. We are so different and so diverse. And at the end, we all kind of identify with each other because we feel the same way.
Yeah, and I think the essence of the podcast is actually very closely linked to your two personalities. Because Cristian, you're describing really wanting to understand, someone's heart and their emotional world, and Liz being super curious and like wanting to know the details. When I hear that, what I hear is a podcast that has intellectual stimulation and an emotional anchor. The combination of those two things is actually very powerful it's what makes a like compelling story, right? You have these two different parts. So I just highlight that because I think often we don't see that we are what make our podcast so special. It's the two of you, and it's the way you operate and the way you think that makes this as cool as it is.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. I think it took us a while to get that also from the stage. Like, we thought we were just having a meetup event in Lisbon, and people were giving us that feedback. We've been to several open mics or whatever, and it's not the same. Like, you guys are doing something different, and we started listening to that a lot. So it doesn't, like like what you just said. I do believe like Liz and I had this chemistry and this specific way of being that makes Storytelling Lisboa and what Lingers unique.
Yeah. Blaze Drink Wine, great YouTube name, says,
"Hi, Blaze.
Landing the plane." Hi, Blaze. Landing the plane is one of the hardest things to learn. How did the two of you learn to do that artfully in an interview?
And Blaze, can I clarify the question? Does landing? Oh, in an interview. Okay.
Yeah.
Actually,
what is landing a plane? I'm sorry.
It's basically like ending, wrapping it up or ending it. Yeah, like landing. I'm gonna credit. See, these are some of the tricks and things. I'm gonna credit Johnny, our producer that helped us in season 1 and 2 with. He, like I can have strong opinions. I don't know. I think it even can come across in this live situation. And Johnny and I would go at it sometimes a little bit, but in fun, like creative. I love that creative clash conversations. And he was like, no, you need to end on one question every time. You need to end on one question every time. And he was right. And that's actually how we do it now. And the question for this new season was, how was it for you to revisit your story today? And it inevitably always brings a great end, actually, because I'm editing it too. And it always end, I like to end it on their voice, not us saying goodbye or anything, and like let the music fade in. And again, that's another thing about this container. It's like, it's unstructured in the middle, but like, it's going to end. And I watch the time and I tell them beforehand, it's not going to go longer than whatever amount of time. And we just sort of, I don't know, artfully. I don't know if we do it artfully to listen to what Lingers and tell us. But I mean, also, it's not like landing the plane's high stakes. If you don't land the plane, like people die, but you're not, that's the beauty. Actually, it's not really high stakes in recording a podcast.
That's such a good point. Cause I think that takes the pressure off and it's really not that deep.
No,
but on the point you just made, we do end these lives with the same question, which is, what advice would you give someone who really wants to start their show, but is just afraid or nervous about actually beginning or hesitant to begin? Liz, I know you were hesitant to begin because you assumed there would be a lot of work, and you were right.
Mm-hmm. And I was right.
And you were right.
But I kind of enjoy it. Oh, God.
Exactly. I knew you were going to like it. You just didn't know that.
Do you want to go first, Cristian? I mean, I have stuff I can say.
You can go.
Okay. I think you need to view, I'm an artist in my other life. And I think you need to view it as it's a process. I think you need to focus on the process and not the product. Okay. Your season 1 is not going to be your favorite thing. I'll just tell you that right now. Like, your season 1 is not going to, and it doesn't have to be, because it's actually where you're learning. And the thing is, you can't learn until you get in the pool. You know what I mean? Like, you can't learn to swim by reading books at the side of the pool. So, you need to do some laps, and I think take the pressure off. It wasn't ideal timing to keep going, but I ended up, and I was the one who was hesitant in the beginning. And then I ended up being the one to push. Right. And part of that was okay, we just started going to the gym. I'm not stopping going to the gym and let my muscles atrophy. We got to keep going and build our muscles and build our skills. And so I think to view it in that way, to view it not as, okay, I'm going to come out and be brilliant and all of these things. No, I'm going to come out and I'm going to focus a lot on editing. I'm going to focus a lot on learning to interview and focus on sort of skills. And also again, I'm an artist, and like I'm never one to have a vision in my mind that then I go towards. I don't do that. Like I do something and I see what it is, and then I like, wiggle with it and then keep going. And so I'm surprised sort of at the end. And personally, I suggest this, like, because you will learn stuff in the process, like what works, what doesn't work, and it is a lot of work. And in some ways, these are passion projects. So they do have to align with your own values and sensibilities. And that's important. But yeah, just like go, I learned how to edit as I edited, and I didn't think it needed to be perfect. But it needed to be good enough. But yeah, no pressure. You're not This American Life in Ira Glass, like on day one, or whatever.
Yeah. And it took Ira Glass a very long time to become the Ira Glass you listen to now.
Yeah, that's it. Like it takes time. And I think Cristian and I have stayed in it long enough. We've been in the gym, to continue my metaphor, long enough that like I'm feeling like, oh yeah, like we got solid deadlifts. Like but like next season might even be like, we're gonna be, I want to like go further.
Oh my gosh.
I'm gonna stop. But
we're gonna cut you off.
Yeah, totally. But like yeah, totally. But like yeah, so yeah.
Cool. Cristian, what would you add to that?
Yeah, basically that, but also something that you used to tell us a lot at the beginning. Create something that you can sustain, because I think when we start dreaming, and when I started dreaming, it was so simple that we just put in the videos out on YouTube and that was it. And then we created this gigantic event around it, and it was so hard to sustain that we kind of went back. So what they always says, or you always told us, create something that you are able to sustain in time, because it's a lot of work and you gotta love it. Otherwise, in season 2, you're gonna be like, I'm done with this. And we kind of been into that place. Liz was like, it's a lot of work and it helps. So yeah, like you don't need to go gigantic. You can start with what you have, your little things, your little notes, your little stuff, and start building up from there, because it can get to that point of just giving up. I guess that's what I will add to it.
Where can people follow your work, learn when season 3 is coming out? Where can people keep track of you?
Do you want? So what we have, basically our Instagram at Lingers, and
at what Lingers pod.
Lisboa.
At what Lingers pod.
What Lingers pod. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So at what Lingers pod and.
At what Lingers pod, we have a newsletter that we normally send when we launch the episodes and the new seasons. The new season we're forecasting to launch it in the third week of this month, so from the 22nd onwards. Hopefully that's gonna be the air or the first episode of the third season, but you can listen in all platforms already, the first and the second season. And I think that's pretty much what we have, Liz.
Yeah, and we'll be launching our third season soon, in probably like 2 or 3 weeks, or maybe sooner, but probably not. And then also at Storytelling Lisboa is our Instagram for our storytelling project. You can follow my art Instagram account at i.draw.monkeys, but you will find robots drawing on there, not so many monkeys. You can follow Cristian at Cuerpo Universo on Instagram. And you can DM us any questions, thoughts, whatever, all of it. Oh wait, is Huete there anymore?
I don't know.
Are we on live?
We're live still.
Wait, yeah. We're still on live, but we're unsupervised. Okay, guys,
she left the room. Yeah.
I wonder if anybody's. But I wonder if anyone's like watching us and we can't see messages, guys. If you're sending any.
Oh yeah, that's so.
We can't even see that you're watching. So
Blaze, maybe we can. There are comments here. Oh yeah, we can. You're still
we can?
Unattended. Tell us secrets. People want to know secrets.
Oh, okay, secrets.
Do Living
Oh God, I'm not good at secrets. I'm not good at keeping secrets for sure. Enjoyed the session. Oh wow, you guys, I didn't realize we could see. Oh, now Huete, we were
Yeah.
unsupervised. We were being wild.
Sorry, my internet completely went out. I heard everything up until your new season is going to come out soon, and you were saying where everybody can find you. I wanted to just say thank you both so much for being so just open and honest about your process and not putting on a perfect front of what it's like to create your show, because that is how I think most people are going to actually learn and feel inspired to take their own journey. So thank you for being here. And for anyone interested in emerging voices, applications for the new cohort will close tonight. I'll put a link for the application in the video description below. Thank you everyone for engaging, and Cristian and Liz for sharing your story.
Thank you for having us. Bye.
I think I
Bye,
know
everyone.
who one of these commenters is. I realized it. Clicked. Hi, Tokes. Maybe.
Oh my God. Okay.